Tasha, could we have roll call, please?
Student trustee Migliaccio. Student trustee Malik.
Yes.
Trustee Withrow. Trustee Gonzalez-Ewan. Trustee Napoli Bellaris. Trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Trustee Johannes.
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez Brito. Trustee Quinlan.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda? Motion was made by trustee Delphine Polk and second was made by trustee Gonzalez Brito. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Student trustee Malik.
Yes.
Trustee Withrow. Trustee Gonzalez-Ewan. Trustee Napoli Bellaris. Trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Trustee Johannes.
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez Brito. Trustee Quinlan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Public communication on matters that are not on the agenda. Do we have anybody?
Yes, President, we do. I have Monica Ambalal, who's receded her time to Leslie Blakey.
Good evening, trustees, chancellor, college presidents, and members of our campus community. My name is Leslie Blakey, and I am the District Academic Senate President, and I wanted to take this time to report out a little bit from our shared governance community, and I thank Monica, who is the Merritt Senate President, for giving me her time. But so I'm going to welcome you all to Merritt for her. So then I get to talk longer, so thank you. I wanted to say that I have completed a tour of going to the campuses. I set up a series of sessions I called Input and Innovation to really hear from the faculty about the things that the chancellor had reported out on her roadshow. And my thanks to the college senate presidents who helped me set up rooms and facilitate the discussions with their senates and faculty. Overall, trustees, I would say that the biggest concern is one of logistics and how changes will impact students as well as faculty. And while we appreciate really focusing on the value of the big picture strategy, it's really important to not dismiss the importance of the details. So I just want to give you a couple examples that were brought to me and people had talked to me in various times. So for instance, centralization of custodial staff makes a lot of sense. But unfortunately, end users didn't get input. So for instance, the library at COA now only has morning pickup of trash. And that problem is that there's trash that fills out throughout the day. It then stays overnight, which leads to problems with mice. And so there's really been a request to change the schedule. I want to make sure I say this is not the fault of the custodial staff, that they're working on their schedule that's been given to them, but that it is really not working with the trash that comes in the afternoon and evening. And so that would have been a simple survey, perhaps, to talk to the end users and say, is there a better time to have custodial staff come through? So that's one. Another problem that has really come up was printing from student devices. So BCC had this ability that students could come and could go to their library and print specifically from their devices. It was a really great program. People were very excited about it. So the other colleges said, we should do this too. And that also helps facilitate for students when we're embracing the swirl, that they have that capability at every single campus. Merritt actually wrote a grant for this. The librarians worked very hard over the summer to work on this. But then once it got to a district IT approval step, at that point they were told they had to go through a shared governance process, but they didn't know what the steps were for that. We've looked it up. It's that process is not explicitly detailed in the new district shared governance manual. The libraries are now taking it to their local senates, to their district, to their local technology committees to try and get up to district technology. But it has interrupted what the BCC students were used to, and it has delayed the other students being able to access this. And so that is really a big impact and something that we really, I think, could have dealt with in another way somehow, because that breaks trust with faculty who saw a need and were working together, and it creates barriers between college faculty and district administration because of a perceived lack of transparency and communication from the faculty saying, wait, we weren't told these different, this new specific type of steps that we needed to do, or where could we find those steps? Is there a website that would tell us all these particular things? Because the shared governance manual is very broad in its scope and leads with aspiration and with ideas, but not necessarily the detailed steps. So what I want to make with both of these, because I think we can learn from these, right? We always need to learn from our mistakes and move forward, is that we want to make sure that the communication is working. Because if we can't do the easy things like making sure that stakeholders are in the room, making sure that people know what's going to happen in various processes, then how are we going to do those difficult and more challenging work that the chancellor has laid out for us to do in the recent road shows? So I just want us to make sure that we do continue to pay attention to the importance of the logistical details while we imagine the strategy as we move forward. Thank you.
Next, we have Chris Gramp.
Thank you, everybody. I had no idea it was going to be up this soon, so I didn't have time to get nervous. So I'm liable to say almost anything here. But I am the co-chair of the Landscape Horticulture Department, and I first want to welcome everybody to our beautiful new facility. And thank you. And tell you how appreciative we are at our department of all of the support that we've gotten from the district, from the college, everybody who's participated in the design. And you're welcome to come up here anytime and have your board meetings, anytime you'd like. And you're also welcome to come here anytime and just hang out too. So Merritt has been in my blood for a long time. I graduated from Berkeley High School in 1968, and I went to Merritt College. I went there for 4 years until my father said, you better get to a four-year university and get your degree. I came back here and started working as an adjunct in 1986 and got hired full-time. So I've been here almost all my life, and I feel that I'm really happy for that. One of the things that I just want to mention tonight is that having been here for a long time, seen many administrations, seen ups and downs in the budget and in the hiring, that the support of their CE programs is really, really important. I know we have great transfer programs here, and I was in it when I was a teenager and so forth, but now as part of the CE program, supporting it, I see how important it is to have our students getting jobs, and that's happened. For example, we have one of the only landscape architecture programs in the state. There are only 3 of them. We're the only one that leads directly to the profession. We've had over 100 of our students get jobs in offices when we were told that, oh, you have to have a university degree to do that. So I think Merritt can be a real inspiration to students to move on with their careers regardless of what their field is. And I just want to end by saying that really key to the success of the CE programs is going to be keeping the programs staffed with full-timers. We have our particular needs in our department, and I won't go into detail, but I know every program at Merritt has this need for faculty, and I really encourage all of you who are making decisions to try to make that a priority, find money to keep good teachers coming in and staying for their whole career, and I think that's what's really going to drive the success of the college. So thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other public comments.
So item 1.6, presentation on district initiatives supporting student success.
Well, thank you so much. Good evening, trustees, colleagues, and members of the community. Tonight's presentation, District Initiatives Supporting Student Success, will highlight our colleges, how our colleges are advancing the board's 2025-26 goals in alignment with our 2023-2028 district strategic plan. You'll hear examples of how our colleges are working to strengthen enrollment and retention, promote equity and student success, enhance teaching and learning, and build campus cultures where all students can thrive. As a district, we have a long history of serving all students, whether they are veterans, parenting students, students with disabilities, justice impacted, or those balancing work and family responsibilities. Our commitment is not only to provide access, but to ensure that every student has the resources, support, and opportunities needed to succeed. This evening, we will share highlights of programs and services designed to meet the needs of Asian American and Pacific Islander, Black and African American, and Latinx students, which reflect our mission to advance social and economic transformation through quality education. We are grateful for the federal and state support that has enabled us to build institutions that are thoughtful in how they serve, not just enroll, how we serve, not just enroll students. The initiatives you'll hear about tonight show how we continue to center the factors that most matter for student success: academic quality, belonging, well-being, and opportunity. I'm grateful to the team you'll see tonight who will be presenting program highlights. They represent the work of many professionals, classified professionals, faculty, and administrators on the front lines supporting the incredibly inspiring, intelligent, and thoughtful students we have the privilege to serve. So I'll call up to the stage President Absada to begin.
Oh, I do this? How's that? Oh, use this one. That's better? Okay. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, Board President. Thank you, Board, and thank you, everybody, for being here tonight to listen to our presentation and learn about all the great things, not all, some of the great things that we're doing here at the Peralta District. I have the privilege of kicking off the presentation with a couple of data slides. And when you see the slides board, they'll look familiar. They're the same two slides that were used for the COA presentation at the end of last year when we were out at COA. And the first slide shows our demographic headcount by race and ethnicity. And if you take a look at it, you'll see this is district-wide, unduplicated, totally added together. You'll see that by far our largest category of students classifies themselves as Latinx, followed by Asian and on down. One interesting note that I recently learned, the Black African American number, if you take the total percentage of all of the Peralta students that are Black, we are the #1 in the state. #1 in the state. Highest percentage of students are Black in the Peralta district compared to all the others. And you can see that they're our third highest group. The next slide shows the degrees that are being earned by ethnicity. And you can see that this also aligns right up with the same categories that we saw for the number of headcount. I do want to make one quick little point that these categories, these are from student enrollment data. Students choose which one they're going to be. And they're really big categories. They're not monolithic. There are perhaps 300 different sub-ethnicities under the category of Asian. So we need to realize that we have programs that may have originally been designed or thought about some groups. Those groups are really broad groups of people, which is why it's so exciting that we have lots of different things. So these are our awards. You can see that they're consistent with the headcount. Latinx and Asian are our top two, and very importantly, that last sentence, there was a rapid increase of 31.2% in the Latinx degrees and certificates in the year from 22 into 23-24. This is important for a lot of reasons, mostly first because it's serving students and they're here to get degrees and certificates. It's also important for total computational revenue, which is one of the board goals, and certainly as a college president, one of my goals to pay attention to the budget and how we're doing on earning as well as on spending. And the degrees and certificates are all part of the part that's highlighted here, the student success allocation. So as those go up, as we award more, we make more money. Also, the programs that you're going to hear about today are part of the second in the middle, the supplemental allocation. Most of the programs have a financial aid component in it, where we encourage students to complete their financial aid application. We encourage students to do their student educational plan, all of which has an impact on that middle part. So money is important, but even more important is this concept, which you have undoubtedly seen before. This is the RP Group's wheel, as I think of it, and as it's saved on my computer. And what it says is a student who has these success factors is more likely to succeed at college. So a student who walks in and is engaged, and a student who becomes connected, a student who makes friends, a student has a good time at college, a student who feels valued and focused is more likely to succeed than a student who does not. All of the programs you're going to hear about tonight have this at the core. We're trying to engage and give students a sense of belonging, and from that, then help them meet their educational goals. The last comment that I want to make before we move into the first major section is that all of the different units all the different programs we have are open to all of our students. So any student, no matter what box they might have checked on an application, is welcome to join and encouraged to join any of the organizations that we have. So that being said, the first group that I get to focus on is the Asian American Pacific Islander group of students. And these are 4 different campuses that have 4 slightly different programs, but all that have the same intent. All of these programs are trying to encourage academic success and social success for our students. Counseling, tutoring, belongingness, lots of different things that we all do, but we all really do them consistently together. And the slide has some data on the number of students that we actually serve in these programs, and it's quite significant. The next slide, before I go there, I'm going to say a couple of words about the Cal Matters article I forgot. I don't know if any of you noticed or saw, there was an article published in Cal Matters Monday that I actually saw was just picked up on KQED about the Laney program, the APAS program. And the article says accurately that Laney College's Anna Peasy federal grant is now expired. We ran out of money, the grant expired, we applied for a new grant, and the federal government at this time is not allocating any new grant money. So we are really grateful that since 2016 we've had this federal money, we've been able to build out the APAS program. In particular, I want to say thank you to Dr. David Lee, who's been the leader of that program, and thank him really for the great job that he's done serving students. You can see 500 students last year were touched in one way or another by the program, but also that the existence of our APAS program has influenced our thinking and influenced our structures and influenced how we do things at Laney College. And I want to promise you that the program will continue. The Cal Matters article actually has that right. All 4 of the colleges received state money, and Laney got $123,000 from the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander categorical block grant from the state. With this money, we will keep the APAS program. It will be different. We will have it be faculty-led, kind of modeled on the Puente model that you're going to hear about later. But we are going to be able to keep the center open at least for some hours for some students. We'll be able to support the student club, the Mongolian club that's talked about in the article, which is just a really neat thing if you haven't read it. So we're grateful, and it's really let us institutionalize and build up the program. So I wanted to say that about that article in case you've read it or if people ask you any questions. These are 3 key initiatives that you see across all 4 colleges to serve this population, and you'll see these repeated as well throughout the night. We're all focused on academic support and enrichment. We're all focused on building community, and we're all focused on helping our students connect externally with their communities and externally with industries and get jobs and have a good time in college. And I know that sounds weird, but it's so true. If you think back on what kept you in college and what made you happy, it was that you built up a community and met people and feel like you're part of the place. So those are some key initiatives. The last slide in this part is a brief student spotlight that I got this from Peralta's only newspaper, The Citizen. Perhaps you've heard of it before. There's a marvelous article that was in there about this COA student who I've actually never met before, but feel like I have met from reading the article. She's an immigrant student from Afghanistan who's a member of the Salam program, which is one of the programs in this group that I was just talking about. And there's a really powerful part of it where she talks about the work she does as a peer mentor for other women, primarily women from Afghanistan, she's doing for all the Afghan girls who cannot go to school. And this program it is one of the ones that we're doing that's really touching lives that makes me so proud to be part of Peralta. So with that, I will pass the microphone.
Well, good evening. And I just want to give a plug that SLOM is the only program of its kind in the state of California. So when we think about setting the standard for excellence as a district, that would be a really good example. So thanks for that. Yes. So I get to describe something that is really, really exciting to all of the colleges, the college communities, and our surrounding community. And a lot of work has been done across the state of California to accomplish this task. So the Black Serving Institution designation is something that has been talked about, desired for many, many years. And we're now at the point where we are now seeing the opportunities, the fruits of labor from many across the state. And so back in 2021, Ed Trust West did a report about the disparities of representation of Black faculty, of Black administrators, of Black classified professionals, so students would feel this sense of connection, and as you heard President Absada talk about, this sense of belonging, right, this sense of value. And so in that report, it was the impetus for some legislation that moved forward that is authored by one of our representatives here, and Senator Stephen Bradford authored 1348, which is really around the designation. And this designation right now is not a funded designation, but that's irrelevant. The reason that community colleges want to get the designation is to help our community see, help our students see that there are values that we have, understanding that we have, and an environment that embraces their cultural norms and identities. Now, all communities are not a monolith, so that may not be the message to everyone, but for those that it is, we want to create that sense of safety and that sense of opportunity at our college institutions. So one of the things that is really important about that legislation is you don't get a designation just because you want one. You don't get a designation just because you've met a certain threshold. Our colleges have agreed and aligned ourselves to do an application that was very focused, and we focused our work on what it is that the district is focused on right now, which is dual enrollment, transfer pathways, really looking at how do we align ourselves in ways to serve students and remove duplication in services, and quite frankly, use our resources in a much more fiducially responsible way. And so with this particular work, we submitted an application in July. Also with the good thinking of our fearless leader, Chancellor Gilkerson, we had a regional convening around with all of the colleges in the Bay Area to talk about, with the CEOs, the Black Serving Institution designation and how we would potentially go about generating money or identifying funders to support this, as is supported for HSI and our ANAPESI grants prior to some of the decisions happening at the federal level. I think it's important when we move forward in this is that our colleges are responsible for institutionalizing this work. So the funding that do come with these programs is not designed to be in perpetuity. It's designed for us to take the principles, take the learnings, and embed it into our institutional structures so it benefits all students. So all of the programs that you'll hear about this evening are really principles that are designed to serve any students, not just those by which are representing the community, and I think that's really, really important. So with that being said, you will hear from President Johnson and many of the other members of the Merritt team around the Emoja program and our HBCU program.
I love that energy. Oh my God. Good evening, everyone. So, what is Emoja? Aside from it being a Swahili word meaning unity, it is really a proven approach to bolstering the academic experience of students in general and African American students in particular. Again, the theme that will resonate throughout the night. And depending on who you ask, we had a little conversation about this earlier, it was conceived of 20 years ago, either at DVC or Chabot. There was a little bit of debate about that. But at its core, it's a learning community, right? That takes a panoptic approach to supporting our students. And this is accomplished through 18 practices or cardinal principles that are intrinsic to the program. So I'm not going to go through all 18. I do want to call your attention to 3 that resonate with me and I thought were of particular importance. So the first one is raising intentional and deliberate purposefulness. And by that, we mean having a clear understanding of what we are doing and why we are doing it. And it's not that learning and teaching has to be prescriptive or predetermined or anything like that, but it's really about the intentionality around expanding the capacity to be curious and creative and bold. And the focus is on developing consciousness around pedagogical practice and choices. The next one, manifesting. The focus is on students. This is something very unique to, in terms of it being called out, but the focus is on helping students reproduce what they learn in the classroom and to be able to take it back to their households, their friends, their communities, their peer groups, so that education can be practical and applicable. And it's not just only that, but we want students to feel like that they can change the world by taking what the knowledge that they've gained in the classroom and putting it toward its highest purpose, which is uplift of your community. And finally, probably the thing that Umoja is known for most is the porch model. Anybody? Porch talk, real talk? Okay, we get it. See, so Tahida's gonna set us straight in a minute about that. But in my view, that's really about creating a learning environment that's open, respectful, personal, playful sometimes, political, and philosophical, okay? The porch is where things get candid, even if sometimes painful, but it's always a safe place, first and foremost, where students can be real with themselves and each other. And in order to do something like that, trust is the foundation of the community, right? Trust is central to the porch learning construct. And it's where we can celebrate and challenge and affirm. And it's where our students find their voice and learn to advocate for themselves. Next slide. So again, this is a model you're gonna see with each of the colleges. We have our respective Umoja communities, but whatever you call the community, whether it's Umoja, Ubaka, or Sankofa, the mission is the same: to affirm, support, and inspire our students to reach their full academic, professional, and personal potential. The model is focused on building the collective, which is a core African principle, in order to empower the individual. And community is central to everything that we do in helping students overcome the challenges both in and outside the classroom. So to share a bit more, somebody who's on the, I don't want to say front lines or trenches because those are word analogy, somebody that's in the mix, in the thick of things, I'd like to call up Ms. Tahida Anderson, who's the project director of Sankofa.
Thank you, President Johnson. Thank you. And I would like to thank you all for being here and inviting me here. I really appreciate that. But I would like to give you more of a boots on the ground perspective of the things that actually is happening across campuses in the Umoja. And so we do have dedicated counselors that support the students in their academic journey. They create comprehensive student education plan. That roadmap to the degree or certificate of their choice is vital to the success of our students, because without building that connection with the counselor, it's kind of impossible for them to know when they change their major. We come into the institution and sometimes we have a goal at hand, but we exposed to so many different things that we choose to change our major. And we need to have that connection consistently with that counselor to make sure that we're successful in our academic journey. All Umojas across campuses have English cohorts. They're designed for a sense of belonging, for students to have curriculum that represents them, teachers and instructors that represent them. That's very important, because if you don't see yourself in these spaces, it's impossible for you to think that you can actually be that instructor or that teacher. So it's very important that we show that and we represent that in the program. We have robust orientations. They're comprehensive. We call them orientation information resource sessions, one-stop shops where students can come in and get onboarding services in real time, where we have programs and services like the Wellness Center and basic needs all in one space, telling the students about what's happening behind the scenes, what's happening on campus, and the things that they can do to prevent them from having a difficult time or presenting multiple barriers, right? We like to inform them about things that's happening in admissions and records. like academic alleviation, record corrections, changing your major, what's the definition of your homeschool. All of these things are important because we have new students who coming in who've never experienced college before. And so we want to meet them intentionally and deliberately with resources right soon as they come in the door. It's about prevention and not treatment. And so we help with economic wellness. We have a comprehensive schedule of workshops, proactive, interactive focus groups that really concentrate on student success from the spectrum of mental health to financial literacy. We had a financial literacy workshop today where we had about 25 students in there, and it needs to continue because students not understanding credit, they're not understanding ownership, and they're not understanding things that will actually give them a sustainable financial living wage in California, right? And so these are the things that we need to promote more in our programs and in our service across the campus. Collaboration is everything. Like we collaborate with every program, EOPS, CalWorks, Next Up, because we know braiding in funds makes sense at this point, and it's important that we work together because we serve the same students. So when we serving the same students, we want to make sure that we're not duplicating services and that the students are getting the things that they need. I know we mentioned the word monolithic here a lot today, right? That's saying everybody learns different. We in a culture and an environment and a climate where everybody has a different way of living. We deal with parents, students, family, homeless students who suffer from domestic violence, and a host of different things. And so we have to be intentional about where we meet those students and how we serve those students and how we show them compassion and concern. And so next slide. Next slide. Okay, so one of our success stories is actually Davina Marlborough. She came into the Sankofa program in fall of 24, I believe, and she had some difficulties and some struggles. She came into our orientation informational session, learned everything about programs and services, and now she serves as the ASMC student body president. Right now, she's actually in Washington, D.C. at the Black Caucus, and she's enjoying so many different things that she wouldn't have been exposed to if she didn't come to Merritt and be a part of these wonderful programs. She actually is a 4.0 student. She is a tutor in Sankofa, and actually will be a peer mentor. We have a host of different things that's happening for students. We understand that employment is the most important thing for students. If they have a sense of belonging and a stake in what's happening, they'll actually persist, and retention is much higher. And so we do our best to make sure that we employ as many students as possible because we see in the data that they actually progress and be successful. So I'm honored to serve in this position. Thank you all, and have a great evening.
That was fantastic. So next, I'm going to bring up Dr. Renaya Johnson.
Thank you, President Johnson. So I have the privilege of talking about the Peralta HBCU Transfer Hub. So as we think about the work that is happening collectively across the campuses, specifically with Moja, as mentioned tonight, I think it's important that we also look for the future. It's important that our students are retained and that they persist, but it's also important that students are aware of their possibilities and what's available to them as they prepare to transfer out of our campuses. So the Peralta HBCU Transfer Hub has a focus on increasing transfers to our historically Black colleges and universities. For a lot of the students here, they may be unfamiliar with HBCUs. As you might know, our HBCUs are located in the South and on the East Coast primarily. And so this is an opportunity to really expose students to what HBCUs can offer them. As they're learning about their identity, as they're building up their confidence, these are institutions that will continue to serve them so that they can reach their ultimate goals. The HBCU Transfer Hub is really also focused on the external partnerships. So as we are working towards our goal as a district, how do we better connect and build out partnerships with our high schools, with maybe nonprofit organizations in the community, with faith-based organizations within the community? This allows us to really be able to partner to ensure that all students within the community are aware of HBCUs and what the opportunity they have in front of them. Within the hub, there are 5 main goals. So the first goal is really talking about the success from the CCC to HBCU pipeline. So this is a guaranteed pathway where students who are fulfilling the requirements are able to transfer to one of the 30+ HBCU schools. The second goal is really talking about that partner relationship building. How do we connect? How do we work together to meet the goals of our community? The third goal is really outreaching, and so this involves multiple stakeholders. So I mentioned Umoja, right? But there are other learning communities on our campuses that have our students that can really benefit for HBCUs. And I think it's important as we're having this conversation to know that although HBCUs have this federal designation, they're open to all, right? You do not have to be Black African American to attend an HBCU. And so it's important that we are recognizing that and opening up this opportunity for all of our students. The fourth goal is to maintain strategic partnerships with other groups. So Umoja, Amend, our HBCU alumni chapter. We're really fortunate in Oakland to have a partnership with the Northern Bay Area HBCU Coalition, which allows us to really connect and provide mentors and opportunities to students to have firsthand knowledge of individuals who have went to an HBCU and who are now here and connected to the community. And the last is to make sure that we're utilizing the data that we have to make sure that we're making smart choices, right? Does this work for our students? Does this work for our community? And so that is something that the Transfer Hub will be able to assist us with. As part of the Transfer Hub, we have developed a multi-year pathway that begins with our students in high school. So beginning their junior year, they are able to enter into this cohort model. So the theme for the junior year is early exposure and enrollment foundations to get students thinking about and believing that they can transfer into Peralta Community College District and ultimately transfer into an HBCU. So within their first year, they're understanding the value and the legacies of HBCUs. What do HBCUs represent, and what can they bring, and what can they gain from attending one? They'll begin their dual enrollment program with taking Counseling 24, which is going to be a Counseling 24 class specific to HBCUs. And then they'll have a peer HBCU cohort and have a college mentor. So as I spoke about that partnership with the Northern Bay Area HBCU Coalition, this is an opportunity where they will be able to have that mentor, which will stay with them all 4 years of their journey here. In their senior year, it's all about commitment to college and building out that cohort culture. So by the end of their senior year, they will have completed 2 classes with the Peralta Community College District. So again, Counseling 24, and then they have the option of either completing an African American history course or an ethnic studies course, because as we know, ethnic studies is now a requirement, right? They'll demonstrate readiness for Peralta. So understanding what are the different campuses, what opportunities are available, do they know about the programming and what the process and everything that they need to be successful once they enter Peralta. And then they have an understanding of what their pathway in HBCU majors can look like. As they enter into Peralta, and it's important to note that for these last 2, this is also the same pathway for our current students, so they are not left out of this model. So within their first year, it's all about academic personal development. So making sure that they have a student educational plan on file, making sure that they're enrolled in the correct majors and classes that they're going to need to be able to transfer to an HBCU based off of the guaranteed transfer agreement, that they understand the requirements and articulation to HBCUs. We really want to encourage them to be involved in campus life, right? We talked about ways of students being able to retain and persist, and we know that being able to explore your cultural identity, having a sense of belonging, and really building out your leadership capability skills are going to be things that are going to help them personally develop and also help them transfer when we talk about competitive applications. And then the last thing is to establish strong academic habits, going to office hours. How do you approach faculty members? How do you tap into the resources that you're going to need on your journey, both here within Peralta and also at the HBCUs, getting our students comfortable with being able to reach out when they do need that help. And then the last year is focused on transfer and transition. So they'll be working on competing their transfer applications. We know that for a lot of our students, this is going to be the first time that they're going to be away from home, right? So ensuring that they understand what the housing requirements might be for the institution that they select, ensuring that they understand the financial aid process, scholarship process, that they go through scholarship essay applications, right? And then engaging in pre-departure transition support. So how do we embrace them? How do we encourage them to get the mental health that they might need? How do we encourage them to be able to support themselves for the first time away from home? As part of this pathway, we also offer HBCU transfer tours and caravan. So the first, and I just want to highlight the photo here, we took a group of students in the spring, and the student that you see here is a BCC student. She transferred through this guaranteed pathway, and she's attending Alabama State University. And she actually was the tour guide on our tour. And so for our students, they were super excited to see her, but it was also a visual for our students to know that they can do this, that they can go to these institutions and that they can be successful and enjoy their time there. And so I just wanted to highlight that and the importance of actually being able to attend a transfer tour and being able to see firsthand the culture, the history, and the experience of being on an HBCU. We prioritize institutions that are within the transfer guarantee pathway or that offer in-state tuition for California students, understanding that our students really are going to be putting in this work the 2 years that they're here in Peralta, and we want to make sure that the institutions that they're going to are going to have the highest chance of being admitted and being supported on their journey. To do that, we make sure that our students at the time of applying to attend the tour are either enrolled in 15 credit units or have completed 15 credit units, that they have a 2.8 GPA or higher, and that they've attended at least 2 HBCU-centered workshops. And again, this just allows them to understand the history, the culture, and importance of HBCUs. And then the last is our HBCU caravan, and I am super excited for this. I bolded it, so we hope to see you guys out there on November 5th at Laney College. This is an opportunity for our community and for our students to meet the HBCUs without hopping on a plane and making the journey out. We're gonna have 30 plus HBCUs in attendance. Students are able to learn about the institutions individually, what do they offer our students, but also our students who might be transfer ready at this point in their career are able to apply for admission. So they offer admission on the spots, they offer scholarships on the spot. So our students are gonna be able to walk away being eligible and knowing that they are able to transfer to an HBCU. And then the most important thing I think for me is this really highlights the district collaborative nature. We're not only working with the partners across the 4 campuses, but we're working with our high school partners. We're working with local community colleges to ensure their students are learning about HBCUs and will be participating. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about as we embrace the swirl of our students. With that, thank you.
Okay, now we'll have next President Denise Richardson and HSI Director Lizette Flores.
Thank you very much, President Johnson. Good evening, everyone. Is Lizette? Oh, there you go. Okay. It is our great pleasure to highlight some of the extraordinary and impactful elements of our Puente programs across the district. And joining me here is my colleague, Lizette Flores, who is the HSI Director at BCC. So I'd like to begin to tell you a little bit about how Puente originated. It originated about 44 years ago now in Hayward, California, so just down the road at Chabot College, and it was founded by Felix Galaviz and Patricia McGrath. And so you might wonder, what inspired them to do this work? And what they determined was that there was a student success gap, particularly for Latinx students, and it was one that they felt compelled to address. And so what they did to do this was they looked at over 2,000 transcripts of some of their students to try and determine why there was such a high dropout rate. And what they found were three elements of a pattern. Students were avoiding academic counseling, they were not enrolling in college-level writing classes, and they were first in their families to attend college. So they wanted to address all 3 of those elements of concern regarding our Latinx students. And so they decided to begin the Puente Project. And while this project, like many of the others that we've learned about this evening, are focused on Latinx students, they are open to all. And they are particularly intended for students transferring to 4-year colleges and universities. And what they've done is they have determined that counseling, mentoring, and introduction or instruction in English is key to their success. So since the 41 years that Puente has been in operation. It has expanded to 7 middle schools, 36 high schools, and 65 community colleges. And our 4 community colleges are among that 65. And it has so far benefited over 300,000 students. So quite a significant track record there. Puente is an intersegmental program co-sponsored by the University of California and California Community College Chancellor's Office, and it is headquartered right at UC Berkeley. So I would like to share with you that cohorts work. I'm personally a huge fan of the cohort model, and the reason for that is that it provides a sense of belonging that you can't find just having classmates in school, but going through the program together provides a sense of comfort and camaraderie that is really key to the success of many of our student groups. And if you have any doubt about how well they work, let's look at a little bit of the data associated with what Puente has done. Between fall 2024 and spring 2025, as we looked at our persistence numbers, we found that at BCC, 82% of Puente scholars persisted to the next term compared to 62.9% of Latinx students who are not in Puente. So if there is any doubt, these cohorts, and in particular, Puente works very well. And we'll see that that's not just unique to BCC. It's actually because all of our approaches are very similar across all 4 colleges. You would see similar success at each of the colleges. Now here you'll see elements of the Puente program that are highlighted by each of our 4 colleges. For Berkeley City College, what I'd like to focus on is that Puente is one of 4 learning communities within the Society of Scholars. Now, the Society of Scholars is composed of the Umoja program, API Lead, Ignite Scholars, and of course, Puente. And the good thing about this organization, the Society of Scholars, is that there's a tremendous amount of collaboration that takes place, sharing of resources, as was said earlier. These are all of our students, so why not get together and band together in a way that benefits the whole? And so Society of Scholars does that in a really magnificent way. Also, I would like to highlight, with regard to College of Alameda, the persistence of Acceso Puente students was 85.9% from fall 2023 to spring 2024, which again is greater than the persistence of the general Latinx population at COA, which is 64.6%, and the overall campus of 67.5%. So again, you see not only at BCC, but at COA, there's clear evidence that this program is working as it should. I'd like to say about Laney College that they do 4-year university tours. There's nothing like having the experience of going to a 4-year university when you've never stepped on a campus, breathing that air, seeing other students that look like you, and engaging with instructors. That is a really rich experience that this program has allowed us to provide our students. And Laney wanted to point out that as one of their features. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about what's happening at Merritt College. Merritt College is very much like a family, as many of us know. I work there, so I experienced that myself. But they help students build bridges to higher education and then to return to their community as mentors and leaders. And Merritt College has a number of examples of when that's actually happened. So next slide, please. At this time, I'd like to invite my wonderful colleague to come up and talk to you a little bit more about some key events and initiatives.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into the Puente project. As Dr. Richardson pointed out, all of our 4 colleges have a Puente team working collaboratively to support our Puente scholars. I think that the strength of the Puente project is rooted in the commitment of its faculty, its counselors, staff, and its mentors holding our students. The framework for Puente, as Dr. Richardson mentioned, includes 3 core dimensions, and they serve as the pillar for all of our 4 Puente programs at Peralta. The first is a transfer level 2-semester English course taught by a dedicated Puente instructor. The course curriculum centers on Latinx voices and Latinx experiences. In the Puente model, The English instructor and the Puente counselor work together in tandem to support students, making sure that they have the supports they need to stay on track. Then there's a counseling component, which includes a counseling course in the fall semester to start preparing students to transfer to a bachelor's granting institution. This course is taught by the Puente counselor, who is the same person that's advising our students on their academics, their personal and career goals, and is working with the students on their education plans, making sure that they've completed their financial aid applications and transfer applications. When I asked Rui Regalado, who's our BCC Puente counselor, to describe what she does, she said, and I quote, "My role is to provide wraparound support services from entry to completion and beyond. As a counselor, I commit to scholars' journey. Scholars come back to us in various capacities for letters of recommendation, for graduate school, job application support, and to serving on panels about the transfer process. So one thing that struck me about Dri, and I think it's true of all of our Puente counselors, is this commitment, no matter how long the journey, that you're committed to working with our scholars. And I also should have said that I'm using scholars and students interchangeably. That's obvious, but just wanted to name that. One thing Dri also said was that considering our political climate, that the Puente counselors also act as liaisons, not only to resources on campus, but to supports outside of our campuses. And then finally, the mentorship component, mentors support Puentistas by serving as career role models and building Puentistas professional networks. At BCC, we've tried a couple of different strategies. As you can imagine, it's challenging to find a mentor for each of our Puente scholars. So we've organized mentor panels where students can connect to more than one mentor at the same time in the same event. And we're currently experimenting with bringing in mentors by career areas so that they can answer questions specific to their field of expertise. And of course, there's the value of seeing professionals who look like you and seeing and hearing from someone whose journey and experiences mirror yours. One thing I wanted to point out is that the Puente Project, like all of our other programs that have been mentioned today, is not focused just on academic outcomes like persistence, transfer, completion. If you recall the 6 factors of success mentioned earlier, we want our students to feel nurtured, valued, connected, engaged. So we're very intentionally focused on the non-academic experiences that our students are having on our campuses. Because we know and research shows that these contribute significantly to the academic outcomes. So non-academic experiences include community engagement, leadership development, ethnic identity development. As an example of cultivating or students feeling nurtured and connected, our counselors are intentional about creating bridges between each of the learning communities. So between Umoja, AAPI Lead, Ignite, building a sense of solidarity amongst our scholars. They work closely to share resources around transfer, financial aid, and then our students know if our Puentes counselor isn't available, they can always go to the AAPI lead counselor, they can go to the Umoja counselor, the Ignite counselor, and get their questions answered. We also encourage scholars to take on leadership roles, to apply for jobs on campuses that will give their resumes a boost. And right now, as you probably know, we're in the midst of celebrating Latinx Heritage Month, hosting a slate of events that celebrate Latinx history and culture. And then finally, I want to leave you with a spotlight on one of our scholars, Miguel Angel Sanchez, also known as Migs. Migs is starting his 2nd and final year at UC Irvine, working towards a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering. Tall order. Despite holding so much personally, Migs was always ready to drop what he was doing to support his peers. And that's what stood out to us about Migs, was just how much heart he had, or he has. He took 4 years in his transfer journey between taking classes at BCC and Laney. He spent a lot of time in our Learning and Resource Center, studying, but also helping his peers with chemistry, physics, and other hardcore STEM classes. In dual enrollment classes, he facilitated activities and was a role model for our high school students. And then last week, he came to BCC to serve on a transfer panel for our Puente and AAPI lead learning communities. And I will say that while the first year at Irvine was an adjustment for him, when I talked to him after his first quarter, he wasn't that happy. You know, I think he was away from his family, he was away from his support network. But last week when I connected with him, he seemed excited to go back to Riverside. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to pass on the mic.
Thank you, Lizette. That was a great segue into talking about how we're supporting students in STEM. And so I have the pleasure of serving at College of Alameda. My name is Nicole Porter, and I'm here with Ann Gonzalez, who will also be talking about the MESA program, which is Math, Engineering, Science, Achievement. This program truly supports students who have historically been underrepresented in STEM fields and who have successfully transferred to four-year institutions and earned degrees in STEM. Our students are many times first generation. Many of us know what that feels like. We know the supports that you need in order to be a first generation student, but also you don't come alone. You also take your family with you. And so we're wonderful to have this program, but also we'll highlight some of the key components a little later as Ann Gonzalez, and we can go to the next slide, please. And so as you can see, our whole community within Peralta supports students in various ways. Some are very well-established programs, and some are just beginning. I will say this, is that the cohort and the team of MESA directors, they work in concert with each other, which is very viable in serving students, knowing what students' needs are. I heard from our colleagues before, not duplicating services, and making sure we wrap around those services that are timely and very intentional for our students. I now pass it on to Ann Gonzalez, who will talk about the key components.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about where some of these key initiatives kind of come into practice with College of Alameda. And so I'll start on the next slide. Student recruitment and outreach. So at College of Alameda, we are a new program. So of course, we're focused a lot on recruitment. And specifically building that pipeline from the K-12 system into the universities. And we want to see more students in STEM. And if you ever want to change the outcome, you have to change the experience. So at College of Alameda, we held a STEM Discovery Bridge program for some local high school students. And this was in partnership with a local nonprofit and also with Puente. So in the morning, our students participated in a class all about student success. And in the afternoon, they did a STEM discovery. And in that STEM discovery, they went and learned about biotechnology, micropipetting specifically. They also did math, or STEM. We learned from our computer science faculty a little bit more about AI, and then they went into the Fab Lab and learned how computers can create things tangible. It was great. And then after that, the students really saw some examples of how science, math, and engineering can solve real-world problems. It was terrific. It's a 4-week program. Next slide. Academic supports are key in these programs. So another focal point of MESA, especially at the College of Alameda, is the use of embedded tutors. They're placed in our chemistry classes. They're placed in those chemistry labs. They're great for the teachers, but also they develop relationships with those students, and they help bring those students into the MESA Center. Typically, the students who do walk into our learning centers, to our learning resource centers, they're not necessarily those first-generation students or students that really need help. So the embedded tutor creates that relationship, builds that trust, and then brings students back in to get the help that they need. Again, if you want to change the outcome, you have to change the experience, right? We also do academic excellence workshops. Those are targeted reviews. They're great. We're piloting one in chemistry and in physics, and that was chosen by the students. Next slide. Community and networking. You heard that from all of the other presenters as well. So based on some student service, student interest surveys, they really asked for more leadership opportunities. And so College of Alameda just launched the Mesa Club. And they learned so much about the democratic process and so many other things. It was wonderful. And another Mesa student launched another club called the Health Through Humanities Club. And they've had some excellent mentorship from faculty that maybe they didn't always have the opportunity to experience in some of their science classes. It was great. So I know that other programs, MESA programs, have used peer mentoring, MESA ambassadors, and other opportunities to build community on their campuses. Next slide. Okay, partnerships. So when students came in to meet with me, they often ask about careers and opportunities for internships. So across the district, MESA programs are creating speaker series, they're conducting industry visits, we're heading off to professional conferences, we're sharing with students, you know, those professional opportunities that are available to them, and they're loving it. For example, College of Alameda, we have 2 site visits set up this year at Emory Pharma and at Science XYZ. Those are local to the Alameda Island, so it's really easy to get to, and folks can kind of see where all of this is going in the Bay Area. Next slide. And as talking about internships, this is Sarah Tawalde. She is a pre-med biology for transfer student. And she applied for and was selected by Stanford to attend the Community College pre-med program. This was a 6-week immersive summer program. She lived in the dorms. She received invaluable exposure to the field of medicine and also to academia. It was great. So overall, at College of Alameda and across the district, MESA is changing our students' experiences and supporting those stronger outcomes. And I'll pass it back to Dr. Porter to take us home.
Thank you. So we got to learn about some of our student learning communities and how they showed us how we honor and serve many diasporas of learners represented in our colleges. They create spaces where students will repeat those 6 success points: directed, focused, nurtured, engaged, connected, and valued, while celebrating their culture, their identity, and the unique strengths every learner brings. This work reflects the shared vision of our Peralta Community College board goals and our chancellor's vision. By affirming students' lived experiences and contributions, we are not just shaping their academic achievement, we are cultivating a future for students to embrace passion, purpose, and possibilities. We thank you for your time, and I will turn it back to you, Chancellor Gilkerson.
Well, thank you again to this incredible team of folks who came together to present tonight. Board President, that concludes the presentation.
So is this time for questions?
Absolutely, if you haven't, or comments.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. I really learned a lot. Oh, sorry. I enjoyed it. It's inspiring to hear about students, but also the work that we're doing to make sure that students can be successful transferring to 4 years. When I was a young person, as first generation going to college, I didn't have that kind of support. I left school after 1.5 years. It took me a while to come back, but I can imagine if I had that support, you know, that it would have been a very different story for me. But I have a couple questions. One is the 82% of Puente students at BCC persisted to the next term compared to 62.9% of Latinx students not in Puente. And I was wondering if there's, what's the biggest barrier to a Latinx student for Puente or a Black student for Umoja to enter into these programs? And could we serve more students if we want? Do we have the capacity to serve more students?
We have the capacity to serve more students. I think one of the things that we could perhaps do a better job of is getting more of the word out about Puente. One of the things that has helped us at BCC is that we were also leveraging our HSI funds. As we know, those are going away. However, we have had a runway that we're really grateful for in terms of determining what works and being able to use these funds to enhance what Puente does. So we're going to, the designation remains, and we're going to continue to do the work and continue to get the word out so that more students can be involved. But in terms of capacity, yes, we do have the capacity to serve more students. I don't know if Lizette has something she'd like to add to that.
I think if we asked our Puente counselor, I think they would say that another Puente counselor would be really, really helpful, because the type of counseling that's offered through the Puente project is so high touch that every year I think we have, way more students applying to the Puente project than we admit. So each year, DRE will admit, between 25 and 35 students, but 35 is really like the max. Like I said, just given the level of, of work that she does individually with them and also as a group. So I think that's one challenge. And I would say in terms of, the challenge on the side of our students is that many of them work, either part-time. Some of them, Migs, for example, who was featured here, was working 2 jobs. And so his transfer journey took him 4 years. But a lot of our students have outside responsibilities and commitments that I think take them away from taking a full load, for example. And it elongates their transfer journey.
So I think I'd also add, Trustee Gonzalez Brito, I think it's a really incredible question. And so I think one of the things we're trying to demonstrate through the entire presentation is just sort of how do we think as a collective across the colleges and thinking about the way we take really dynamic and important practices that have been seed funding through the funding support both at the state and the federal level that have allowed us to understand what these practices are. And so we now have to have the urgency and the ability to say, this practice seemed to work, this intensive, I'll use the example, counseling model. So how do we look at our counseling model just generally to say, is there tweaks or changes that allows us to serve more students? Is there a model with the English core course and enrolling students in those as a core fundamental of Puente, something that we could level up? So how do we have conversations with English faculty or with counseling faculty to think about just expanding good practice? When we talk about the Umoja principles statewide, again, how Dr. Johnson was saying, these are not just things for, Umoja specific communities, but really principles that should be sort of inculcated across the institution to think about how do we create trusting environments for students to have the conversations we have. And so part of the work in working with our faculty leadership, like you heard Dr. Blakey here tonight, how do we move to those kind of conversations about how do we really think fundamentally about what we can do to serve the largest number of student population we have on the campus? And we have not yet, I would say, both here in the Peralta district and I'd say statewide and nationally, really thought about, right, how do we actually take these principles and practices and make them sort of institutional in some way and take the chance to do that. And so I think we are on a transformation journey as a district, and this is why this presentation was demonstrable of like that thing, right? That we're all offering these kind of things. So how do we think about it to scale? How do we kind of decide where we see success and really putting resources behind that and pruning in areas where maybe it's allowing us to be thin. And so I think your question is really important to us because when we see a percentage point difference in outcomes, when the state and nationally are talking on return on investment for students, we really do need to be thinking about, right, that beginning part that Tahita was talking about. How do students know these things? And so I think that's where we're moving as a district. And you saw that in the BSI application and the way the colleges went forward and had the same goals, the same principles so that we can work fundamentally on them across the district to strengthen our ability to understand what our students want and actually deliver together versus sort of in competition with each other. So we have work to do, certainly. We have more students who are interested in all of these things, but how do we sort of reframe our institutions not to be boutique programs, but to be fundamental about the way we approach it?
I just have one, thank you. I have one more question, which is, so I mean, I went to a 4-year university my son is a student at Laney and machining. And so I'm thinking about these programs that are set up for transfers to universities, but then I'm thinking about the students that are in career education. And he's really struggling right now. Like, I think if I didn't have like the skills I do and the advocacy lens that I do and the time, like he probably would drop out. So I wonder about the career education students, and maybe at some point we can hear about how we're addressing, student success in CE. I would be really interested in hearing that.
Thank you for that. And we'll absolutely, I think we have study sessions coming up, and so that may very well be a topic to go through. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Again, also thank you, everyone involved. So I have two questions. So the first portion, again, thanks for the information regarding the Emoja program, the village, all the versions per college. And the stat regarding us being the highest in the state, can we advertise that? All to say, to be honest, like, no offense to the surrounding counties, let's get these students, man, and get these FTSs up and get some money for Peralta. But I want that to be well known throughout, so they know, hey, you can come here because we have a plan for you to be blankety blank or successful, or what have you. And so I have two questions. One might be causing more work, but I just want to know basically what would be the persistence, similar how they did for Latinx, like 82% or 80-something% continued on to the next semester versus 60 blank percent that continued on. It'd be great to just know that, but not pressing. Just, that's an awesome stat to just have throughout. And then the main question I have for the 4-year program, which I wish I was a junior in high school right now, but if somebody didn't start as dual enrollment and they just came into Peralta, can they jump in year 3? I know it's cohort-ish. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, so absolutely. So one of the things I don't think that I mentioned within the presentation is that we actually have a dedicated counselor who is specific to serving students who have interest in attending an HBCU. So if they are entering within their 3rd year and let's say they're already at 50, 40 credits, right, they're still able to meet with this counselor and ensure that the classes that they are needing to take will get them into an HBCU. They're still able to attend the various workshops. So absolutely, it's still open, regardless of where they are in their journey.
Okay, I no longer wish to be a junior. Hey, I know, thank you. Okay, and now I'm jumping over to the MESA program. I'm like staring at everybody for the wrong things. The MESA program first, thank you. On a personal note, when I was doing my master's, it was in analytics, which is STEM. I was always, in the 2 years, I was always the only one who looked like me in the room. And then I became an instructor. I teach in STEM in the analytics program. Looking around at my students, again, I was the only one who looked like me in the room. I didn't even see anyone coming up in the I was gonna say ranks, but to become a professional in STEM. So in my mind, I was like, oh, do I have to go to high schools? Do I have to go to middle schools? What do I do? But all that to say, I appreciate that we are creating a push for this, because Peralta students do not look like what STEM professionals look like, right? But they will be. I'm one, right? So soon we'll have more, and I really appreciate that, and especially the MESA Club. When I was in the master's program, we started our analytics club, and we were able to, of course, build camaraderie, but a lot of study sessions, like coding, what have you, whatever version, we did a lot of that, which everybody needed help with. And we got new members. More so, we got new members and we got people involved. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Johannes. And we'll be certainly following up on data pieces. And I wanted to just underscore that the BSI designation that we're applied for the state is really hopefully another marker, right, where our colleges will be designated as Black serving institutions that really undercuts the fact that we actually have principles and practices in place that move students to success. So we're really excited about hearing the outcome of that, and so appreciate the questions.
Thank you so much for this. I want to go back to the Puente program. I should have done Puente at my community college. My sister did, and it did so much for her. One question I had for you, Chancellor, around budget. So I know Dr. Richardson, you mentioned that our HSI funding is getting cut, and that's not just us, that's across the board, as I understand it. Are there any conversations at the state level about having to backfill? Because obviously these programs are working. Are there conversations happening at the state level to backfill this funding?
So there are lots of conversations right now, Trustee Delphine Pope, great question, about what we'll do in the face of these cuts from the federal government on these programs. I think right now the State Chancellor's Office is working collaboratively with a lot of partners, the governor and others, to really assess and understand what the impact is for our state. Certainly the largest impact is to California and California's community colleges in particular. There is work being done at the state level to have conversations, again, with our budget and the way things are right now. You know, the question will be whether or not there'll be an ability to do that. I know for our district, we have 2 HSI grants that were in process, right? So in midstream. And so certainly we're notified that we have time this year to spend down and close out our programs. We're really grateful again for the dollars that we have had from the federal government in terms of these programs to help seed a lot of the good work that's already done. So we have programs that were actually ending and ended last year or the year before. And so these will be taking those practices together. But one way the state has, and why you saw a braiding of programs that we showed tonight, is because there are a lot of state-funded programs, Emoja being one, MESA being one, right? The dollars that come for ANAPEZs for the state is the state's way of helping support this work. And so we hope that the state will at some point fund the Black Serving Institutions designation
That was my next
similarly.
question.
Yep. So that did not go through. We have not seen funding for that. And that is, again, how President Dixon was talking about our efforts as a region to just also search for and look for and identify possible partners who'd want to help support the continued work we're doing.
Please let us know how we can help.
Thank you so much.
So my question concerns what percentage of our part-time students have ability to participate in these different organizations that are so critical and so important to student success. And really, I think the real importance of this question is, as our K-12 population declines, more and more of our students are going to be working people that are coming part-time, and that we need to start preparing for that. And I'm just wondering, I know it's going to be a very hard transition because you're dealing with a much wider group of students taking classes Saturdays and weekends, and Saturday is a weekend, but evening classes, and their opportunities for participation are going to be much more difficult. But it's something that seems like we really need to plan for around student, if we're going to maintain the same levels of student success for this population.
It's a really great question, Board President Quinlan. Thank you so much. So I think large scale, these programs all serve part-time students. I mean, the majority of the students who go to Peralta are part-time students. 70% of our student population goes part-time. And so what I love about these programs and what you've heard tonight is meeting students where they're at, right? Really like trying to find ways that support them, answering emails, doing things, creating events and opportunities where students can participate in different ways. And so you heard a little bit of that tonight related to evening offerings of certain programs and partnerships, these trips. And so we need to continue to work on that as we're looking at our larger transformation. How are we serving students who are part-time, and how we can actually help them through the pipeline in a quicker fashion. And so some of that is related to our scheduling and the onboarding students, understanding how they get through. One of the student highlights tonight on the MESA student success, so Sarah told that was talked about tonight. I think one of the amazing things that Director Gonzalez didn't mention about her is that, this is a parenting student. She has multiple children. She, was balancing all of these things and really trying to find this opportunity that allowed her to get this kind of real world experience at Stanford. But, so she needed a particular type of program that would allow her to do something intensive versus something that was drawn out over time because of the management of this. And so what I love about what Dr. Gonzalez did and the program was really find and support her for the right opportunity for her, right? So not every student was set up for the Stanford program per se, but this was a perfect thing for a woman who had multiple children and was trying to like balance those things out. So we can do more of it. We want to be conscious of that. That's why we're having these conversations sort of district-wide about how we support students, how we expand to evening and weekend more thoughtfully. But I do really want to commend the programs because the largest number of our students are going part-time, and so they're finding ways to serve these students. Could we be doing it better? We could do everything better, right? We can continue to learn. And so certainly appreciate your thoughtfulness. And man, I'm with you. Like Saturdays or weekends? I didn't know. What does that even mean?
So I guess the other thing that becomes apparent to me is that if we're going to continue to serve students in the way that you guys have been doing such a great job and expand that to areas where we have to grow, we're going to need more funding. And that's not necessarily going to come from the federal government or from the state. And we need to be thinking about that. And I know you've talked about that, Chancellor. And this board needs to be thinking about that and developing strategies for that so we can have the funds to support our students at all levels.
I appreciate that, Board President. And again, I think, this is this difficult dynamic conversation, right? So what we have with decisions made by the federal government, dollars that we anticipated we were going to have, and now have shifted, and then we look to the state, and the state also has funding sort of difficulties and a lot of needs or things we want. I do want to remind our community that even though we've been through years and years of budget reductions, we still have a lot of abundance in our district. And so the way we use the funds that we have in the best ways, thinking about how we can move forward in serving students more collectively, how we can not compete with each other, and how we can really sort of figure out what the best practices are and really fund those and see how those lead to student success and set the standard for community college excellence, I think is part of it. So I think it's both and. It's going out to seek other funding, but it's also looking at our own house and deciding where we can actually figure out the way and the strategies that are best going to support our students being successful and putting dollars towards that versus sort of scattershot across the district.
Do we have any other questions or comments from the board? Trustee Hill?
I love that we're not trying to do more than this tonight. Like sometimes really less is more. And just really having that focus, giving us a comprehensive view in a more patient way. I'm so impressed with the staff. I'm just so impressed. Like not just brilliance, but super passion and dedication. And I'm hoping that I get a version of that PDF with all their names and pictures so that I can really put eyes to, after COVID, I lost track of a lot of our staff and we've had turnover. And so just really sort of understanding who's on board and so forth. It was really lovely seeing you. I in particular really liked the emphasis on the way in which these programs help us all rise. I think it's a really brilliant example. I think, Chancellor, you talked about sort of like best practices and figuring out what works. And I think it's a really good example of understanding that when we pay attention to the most vulnerable people in our society, everybody benefits. And a lot of times people who aren't targeted as, or like they're not stereotypically in these target groups, they're really struggling. And so when we figure out how to build programs where we all rise, then everybody benefits. And I just think I think that's really brilliant. We need to keep emphasizing that. It's a win-win world. It's not a zero-sum world. I wanted to ask a question about housing, but I'm going to skip it and just promote that tomorrow at noon, there is a presentation that our chancellor is doing on the Real College California Basic Needs Survey, which was, I think you had, 77,000 responses. And so, you go to the California Community College League website and then sign up for the webinar. And I'm really looking forward to seeing kind of, your brilliance and, you showing off Peralta and us showing you off, but also really digging in and understanding this, particularly the questions about housing. We mentioned some of these programs like the Emoja program is trying to help students who were desperately in need of housing. And so that. President Johnson, I had a question for you about the Umoja program. You used the question, the term manifesting, and I really liked the idea of sort of applied learning and making it real, making it grounded, taking lessons to our communities and then showing, look, these programs actually apply in some serious way. And I'm wondering whether you have an example of how that works. What's it actually look like on the ground? Kind of carrying those lessons into the community, if you would.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So in terms of, because I don't have an encyclopedic recall of syllabi of the particular classes that fall within Sankofa or Umoja, I think the stole my, yes, but I was going to say more broadly, it's the idea of service learning. But also, but even more than that, I would suggest that the interpersonal skills, the critical thinking skills, and the communication skills, I've long advocated that the core principles of a liberal education, and the classical, I'm not talking about political, but a liberal education requires our students to be able to do those three things: interpersonal skills, critical thinking skills, and communication skills. And I think that to a certain degree, we are in the business, or it's our responsibility to help acculturate students who may not have any notion or idea of what being a college student means, and being able to adjust to that, but also to feel inspired and empowered to be able to apply those skills to their communities. I'll just give an example, just the cohort model. I think someone asked a little earlier, like kind of what's the secret sauce, I guess, in the sense of like, why do you see the success, the gap in success for something like Puente or say, and we'll get those statistics for you for the other learning communities, or even I have my colleague, back in the day, at Berkeley City College, we ran PACE. And I think there's something about the cohort model and being able to replicate that and learn from each other and going through it together. I think that there is a very compelling aspect from a pedagogical standpoint and from a learning standpoint that we need to pay a bit more attention to. And I think that, and you even see that in terms of people pulling their relatives and friends and into the programs after they've kind of experienced. It's been maybe a watershed moment in their educational journeys, and then they want to reach out and share it with their peers, with their family, with their friends. Because part of, even in 2025, I would just suggest this and I'll be quiet, even in 2025, I still think that there is this notion that perhaps school isn't valuable, or it isn't for me, right? So the extent to which we can mitigate some of the things that happen, or the educational experience of our students once they arrive, because it's very easy for someone who is trying to overcome self-doubt and imposter syndrome and all of those things. It's very easy to encounter something in a classroom or at a desk or at a counter and say, you know what, maybe the school thing just isn't for me. And then we don't see them for 10 years, right? So I think the compelling element to cohort learning is that it reaffirms and empowers students because they are learning alongside of like-minded individuals, and they have a sense that the people who are either teaching them or counseling them are deeply invested in their success. So I think it makes it a little easier for them to garner those skills that I talked about, and that's what they take back to their communities and peer groups.
I might also offer, Trustee Gonzalez-Yuen, that you heard a component of all the programs, which is around peer mentorship, student workers, right? Tutoring, embedded tutors, all this thing, that's manifesting. That's students taking their own brilliance and their lived experience as a student, like coming into the system and saying, I'm going to actually now serve as like an ambassador, right? No wrong front door. And I'm going to now help a new student figure out how to like navigate the system. That's manifesting, right? It's I'm a tutor in helping you in MESA, and I'm going to like help make sure that you understand, you know, this physics class because it was so hard for me. And so I'm manifesting, I'm bringing it forward. And so I think what the Umoja principle about is really like, how do you take what you've learned and not hide your light, but how do you make sure that your light is like shining out? And so you're doing it in service for others, whether that's your family, whether that's the community around you or the community you serve. And so we are really intentionally building this up. You can see this with our student safety aid program too, right? 23 new state community safety aids that we trained recently, the 40 plus students that we did with the No Wrong Front Door, the, you know, students across the board. We want to give them lived work experiences that allow them to actually, right, use application of what they're learning, right, in, you know, the class in service to each other. And so I think there's a lot of brilliance that we get. We have it in our student communications group too, right, telling us how we should outreach to students now, right? So I think that's what I really see as components of all of these programs and sort of what we're trying to do across our institutions.
Thank you. I'm asking a question both as a trustee and also as an instructor, because we have these students who are bringing all this generational trauma. And so I'm really, I'm just looking to the wisdom of people who are really focusing on this and trying to figure out, all right, what are these core principles and how do we make them work? And so again, I'm just really, really appreciative of the work and what we've heard today. So thank you.
Just one more, or maybe two more possibly. First of all, again, thank you. This was absolutely amazing. This was really, really informational and incredibly amazing. I have to say about 25 or 30 years ago, I had a mentor that said, the faculty at community colleges are the angels on earth. And yes, I'm a faculty member, so okay, yes. But I have to say, what you all do, meet the students where they are, create that sense of belonging, build those relationships, do everything that often we don't have the time to do in a classroom. Those are the things that make the pivot, the change, the ability for many of our students to kind of keep on going. Because as you said, you have a student that has a bad encounter at one point in time, and that could be the end of that road. And so you all were so incredibly impressive. The staff that's not even here, all the people that play a part in what you do, so incredibly impressive and so incredibly important. I love the idea of the porch and manifesting. The story about Meg and what I think is so cool about Meg, and you had just said it a second ago, Chancellor, is not only are you doing these to these particular individuals and changing their lives, but as Meg was doing, he was staying in there and probably even at UC Irvine, bringing people with him. And all of the individuals that you all have helped, that we've helped over the past, how many, oh my gosh, 60 plus years? They're continuing to generate these circles of belonging, these circles of connection, these circles that really, that sense of connectedness that they maybe would have never felt without all of you. So what we do and what you all do in particular is so just inarticulable. I know that that's not actually a word, but I use it often. It just is. It's awesome. It's sublime. It's so beyond words. It really is. I'm going to go grim. So now I'm going to go grim. And I think that this also really centers the timing, because when you would place this on the agenda, we had no idea that on September 10th, we were going to find out that the funding was going to be taken away at the federal level. And so that to me, or this to me, makes that even so much more blatantly wrong, but also blatantly inexcusable, and also terrifying. Terrifying in terms of 25, 26, we seem to be okay. 26, 27, could be a really, really, really bad year for many of the other districts who have other resources available to them. But when we are dealing with the many other districts, including our own within the state, that have limited and less than what is needed in terms of resources, where does one even get the funding? So to be able to hear that, yes, part of what we're doing in terms of the modification and the reshaping and all of that is that we do have abundance within. To President Dixon's point, which I think is so incredibly essential, and this happens at many colleges and our district no different, is that we get used to seeds, we get used to funds, and they were never intended to be used or given in perpetuity. It would be really good if we had more of a runway, but I think the wonderful blessing is that we've been doing this for so long, and you all have been doing this so incredibly well, that it is in the blood. It is in what we do. It is already in the infrastructure. And so the big challenge, but maybe we could say it's the creative challenge, is the ways in which we continue to do it with maybe even more gusto and more strength, even as these funding mechanisms go away. And hopefully at a certain point, I know I'm being recorded, but hopefully at a certain point there will be a change in the administration and things will be brought back. But this is going to be, it will be, it's terrifying. It's terrifying, but I'm also really, really gratified to know that it is already within our people and it is within our district. Not, yes, the system, but particularly in this district. So thank you. Thank you.
So just, I have one concluding remark. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Johnson, the Merritt staff, faculty, students, for inviting us up here to this amazing facility. For me, this facility represents the passion of our faculty and staff that work in this department, and what their vision showed and the work they put into developing this. It certainly meets the purpose of our student success, and it creates all kinds of possibilities, and we need to make sure that our taxpayers that paid for this building through Measure G understand the value and the beauty of this in terms of the future of this college and our students and our community, and the possibilities that this creates is unlimited. And thank you very much for inviting us up here and seeing this.
Sorry, this is, I know I said concluding remarks, but I'd just like to make a comment on the lovely presentation shown earlier. I'm a part of API Lead, and I'm just kind of throwing that out there, but I think having a class designated for career and community is super important. Just flat out because, everyone has this going on and everyone has this going on, and honestly making friends at a CC is hard, and even connecting with counselors on a deeper level is sometimes really hard. So that's super important to us. And even I went to the panel last Thursday, I went to the panel, and seeing students that look like you who have succeeded in this world is super motivating and super inspiring to see. So having those students set out a pathway of success and showing you and guiding you how you can go ahead and do the same is super motivating. So I just like to point out, thank you for the creation of API and to its existence. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much for the presentation. I just wanted to take some time to really own in on the MESA program. I'm also a part of MESA at Berkeley City College, and I definitely recognize its importance. Building off of what Leo said, I mean, you get a sense of people that you can relate to, not only on a personal level, but on an academic level, and not even the people, but the environment itself. So at Berkeley City College, we just moved the MESA Center to a whole nother room. And even with that environment change, I think I was still able to have a less intimidating experience, just seeing the same faces there. Again, like what Leo said, it's hard to make friends sometimes. It's hard to walk into a room where you don't know everyone, you don't know, how they're going to respond to you or anything, but just sitting at a table in MESA specifically, you have STEM majors, and I myself, as a STEM major, find it really easy to just talk to people about, what class are they taking or what interests them. And I mean, MESA itself also introduced me to a lot of new opportunities. So it was my first experience as being a tutor. So I did see that on the slideshow is that you have embedded tutors, you have ambassadors. So I was able to start tutoring as of last semester, and it has been probably one of the most transformative experiences. I mean, really being able to break down a problem for people who have not been able to understand it, and kind of putting myself in their shoes, it has helped me to better understand like what it means to not only just be a peer, but to be a leader in that sense. And something else that was highlighted on the presentation, I forget if we went through it specifically or not, it was the academic excellence workshop. So essentially, you own in on a specific topic in STEM for MESA here. And we had one at Berkeley City College last semester, which was kind of a high-level overview on a bunch of challenging computer science topics. And I think that students who, are kind of interested in computer science or not, it was really amazing to see that they could get this understanding of really complex concepts, but they're able to kind of understand, hey, this is something I like, this is something that I'm gonna move forward with. And to see that kind of engagement through this workshop was pretty amazing experience. And I really like the fact that the MESA Club was highlighted at College of Alameda, because I think it is an amazing student-led kind of just activity or club organization at Berkeley City College. We have, and I like to say Berkeley City College a lot because I'm from there, but I think it's amazing to know that there is stuff like this going on at other colleges. And I think we should really continue and hone in on the fact that, I mean, we're all in the same district. We all have the same program, and Merritt just launched in 2025 this year. And I mean, I'm looking forward to see what they're gonna do over there as well. And hopefully, we get a MESA club at each campus, and we get this cross-campus connection. And I mean, yeah, pretty good stuff so far. And that's it for me. Yeah.
And with that, I think our meeting is closed, adjourned.